Working in a creative role can be hit or miss. You see, creativity is so very personal, and the demand to create day after day can sometimes be draining. And there are other times where you may just not connect with the client or the project or the environment that you're working in. And that can be an absolute killer to your creativity. So, what do you do when that happens? Hi, my name is Abby Gatling, and welcome to Creativity Uncovered. This is my podcast where I uncover how everyday people find inspiration, get inventive, and open their imagination. Basically, I want to find how people use creativity at home, at work, at play, and everything in between. And my goal for the podcast is that you'll be armed with a whole suite of tried and tested ways to summon creativity the next time that you need it. Today, I'd like to welcome Rowena Preddy. Welcome. So glad to have you. So, you have had an interesting creative career, and you worked in an agency, you're now running your own business, very different experiences, which I'm sure have impacted your creativity. But before we talk about that, I actually want to go all the way back, and I want to find out about your creativity growing up and, what did that look like for you?
So I was kind of the high-strung kid, which probably would be the kid that was probably tested and diagnosed for ADHD when I was a kid, but it was back then it was just called high strung. So I kind of went balls out at the world at everything I did. But I was also, my mum really has realised very early that I kind of had that flip side to me, that if I didn't find ways to recharge, it's almost like I had kid burnout, and I'd just sort of, before again, another word that we didn't hear back then. And so she really encouraged me. I did a lot of fantasy reading when I was a kid. I got into that really young, before it was a whole genre. And really fast, my mum had to start figuring out what the next book was that I could have at the library. So I really got into that sort of imagination space through reading for Harry Potter and all of those sorts of things. And I doodled a lot. Like, I would set myself projects. I was a projects kid. So I naturally did quite good at school. Yet another ADHD thing, that kind of probably high performing, all of those sorts of things. But I also, that creativity that came through, like I always believed in magic, and I always thought my teddies came alive at night and stuff like that. And I would set myself projects. I was that kid when something came on the TV channel, and it was, hey kids, send us in your best pictures and stuff. And I would have plans for what I was going to send in, and I would make a whole project out of it, of what I was going to do. So I was already setting myself projects. My most coveted possession when I was a kid was my Crayola markers. And in New Zealand, where I'm from, Crayola markers, we only had 2 sets of colours. And I remember coming over, I think I was about 10, and we went to Toys R Us, which was mind-blowing for a kid from New Zealand. There was nothing like that. There was little small independent toy shops back then, but there was nothing like Toys R Us. And I found the Crayola section, and my parents offered me any choice of any toys in the entire shop. I came home with 10 sets of Crayola markers. I had the pastel ones, I had the skin tone ones, I had the vibrant ones, I had every single set, and they were my most coveted possession. I loved them. I had a giant pencil case that I would take to school with them, and people almost had a checkout system for them, because if it didn't come back, I had to hold people accountable to their usage of my most prized possession. I remember coming home crying one day, and my mum couldn't get out of me what was wrong, and somebody had drawn over black marker with my brightest yellow marker.
Oh no. Oh no, ruining it.
And that was the yellow, it was the yellow, and you can't draw freaking rainbows without yellow. Like, it was devastating.
Oh, God, I feel your pain. I feel your pain. I feel like I was the same as well. Like whenever, for Christmas or birthdays, you'd always write your little list of presents that you would like, which is such a godsend for parents, I'm sure. And mine was like, this art set, these pencils. Like, sure, you don't
Oh,
want some type
pencils.
of toy.
I'm still very precious about my pencils. I have my own pencils and pencil case just for doodling within my business, but it is my pencil case, and nobody is allowed the pens from that pencil case. But yeah, that's definitely carried over.
So you were sort of doodling and drawing and stuff like that. Tell me, did that carry through to your high school? Did you pick up art in high school?
So I'm not sure, like definitely I feel like it's a generational thing. Millennials, we kind of, we had very distinct career paths that were open to us, and they were almost tiered, like top tier smart person career paths, and then they kind of like graduated down, right? Like it wasn't like it is today where there's a lot more flexibility, there's a lot more, you don't have to go to uni to be successful and have a well-paying job. And as already mentioned, I was a smart kid. I was an overachiever. I was disgusting. I literally did not study, and I was getting the A's and B's and things like that. And everyone had put me on the career path. I was a natural at numbers, and everyone had put me on the accountancy career path. I was put into that career path. I was pigeonholed, smart kid, good with numbers, you're an accountant. And it came to fifth form, which I was trying to figure out what this is. I think it's like the equivalent of year 10-ish in Australia. And I was given the option to take 6 subjects versus the normal 5, because I was the smart kid, and so they naturally, I think, assumed that I was going to chuck in like a physics class or these sorts of things, that I was going to go and pick another high achieving smart person subject. And I wanted to take art.
Ooh,
I realized that in that year, that's when you stopped being like having the just standard class art thing that you would have once a week with the rest of your classmates. I realized that was the year that I was going to have to stop taking that, and I was going to miss it. And so my mum had to go to bat for me at the school, because the school's like, that's not why we offered it to her.
Oh, right. So they were trying to block you from actually taking art.
Yep.
Oh, gosh. And your mum supported you?
Yeah. So my mum is freaking amazing. My mum probably inspired, I would say, 90 to 100% of my creativity. She was the one that, she was a stay-at-home mum, but she wasn't the stay-at-home mum that thrived in cooking and things like that. She was the one that made things and did things and had her own business making craft kits and things like that. I used to be an artistic roller skater, and I went up to quite high level in competition. She made all my costumes, and like they were coveted, like they were immaculate, amazing, bright, colourful dream costumes. She actually went back and studied. First, she went back and did some high school subjects through an open high school at home, and she did all art subjects. So my mum actually graduated from the same degree as me 4 years before me as an adult student.
That's great for sharing assignments.
So my mum, she fought for it, because I think she'd seen the impact it had had on her life. And she was probably put into the category, when we're talking about that category and class system, she didn't have the degree. She'd been the stay-at-home mum. In a lot of people's eyes, she probably would have been seen to have less value.
Mm.
And I think mum had seen me grow up as the high-strung kid who had an outlet when she could read the books. Like I could read books in a day. I could spend a whole day doodling and creating a project that I'd set myself. And so she'd seen that I had those two sides of a coin, and saw the value in it, and probably saw a lot of the pressure that was being put on me, and saw the value of having that at school.
Yeah.
So I started off in art that year and started off with D's. Oh. And it really hit me. I was the smart kid that was supposed to achieve and do things naturally, right? And I worked my ass off, and I freaking loved every second of it, and I came out with an A.
Oh my gosh. It's a power of
I
passion, isn't it? Like that you
yeah,
keep working until you can get there. That's amazing.
if you'd asked me at the beginning of that year, I couldn't draw. Realistic things I could not draw. And I ended up doing a painting that got like a gold star type thing, like the award for that project type thing.
Wow.
But yeah. And my mum was definitely my biggest cheerleader in that space. So, of course, I come out of that year and the career counsellor sat me down because at that, I think it was in that second to last year at high school, they sit you down and go, well, what subjects are you taking? We need to support you on the way that you want to go. And, of course, there was the big push again for me to take all the accounting, maths, that sort of subjects. And my school was amazing. It was huge. And so often art was just a one-tone subject. Like you would go and art was the subject. But my school was so big, they were able to divide it up into sections. There was photography, there was painting, there was sculpture, there was printmaking, and
Wow.
there was graphic design.
Oh my gosh. That is a dream.
Right? And so I did a deal with my family and with the school that I would split my subjects in that year, that I would do accounting and maths and graphic design and photography, and then English. And I came away with A's in all my art subjects and quite happily failed accounting. I still can't quite figure out whether I did it on purpose.
Wow.
I didn't do it on purpose.
Yeah.
But my final year was amazing at high school. I was able to take graphic design, art history, painting, and photography.
Oh my gosh. Wow. Wow. What an absolute change from the previous part of your high schooling. So I guess that's what led you into doing your university degree that your mum also did.
Yeah.
So at what point did you think, oh, okay, this is my career now? Or did you always think, oh, this is my passion and I'm just going to do it on the side and I still might be an accountant?
No, there was no question in my mind. From my very first graphic design lesson, I had the best teacher, and I feel like teachers are the person that can definitely spin you one way or another. And having passionate teachers and having passionate people who are helping people find their version of creativity. And I just had the best, Mr. Gardner, hands down, best teacher I ever had. Like, he was cool. He was like really there for each person and who they were. Like, we had the goth kids in our class that kind of went a little left field, and he celebrated that and, like, helped them find their space and explore it in their own way. And then we had, the very quiet sort of kids, and he really brought them out of their shell and stuff. And then there was me. We got given our very first project. I remember this. We had to explore something in 100 different ways in 100 boxes drawn like in a thing, and we had to explore. We had something like, I think, 10 or 20 topics that we had to draw within those. So I chose a ladybug. I still remember this project. I'm still so proud of it. I'm pretty sure my mum still has it at home somewhere. And we had to draw that ladybug using these different ways of drawing it. So we had to do it graphically, we had to do it as a pattern, we had to do it realistically, we had to do it abstractly, we had to do it monochrome, we had to do it in all these different ways to explore a concept. And that first project was it for me.
Oh my gosh.
I was like, this is how my brain works.
Yeah. Yeah. God, I love that idea, the lateral thinking of that project, because it's also letting you try before you buy, really, because you're trying all these different ways of doing it, and you're going to resonate with some of them more than others.
I still, to this day, and this probably lead us into talking about how I've built my business a little bit, but even with the way that I have built my business and the way that I have built out the kind of packages that I offer within my business, I still have time set aside with my pen, my paper, music cranked up loud to do exactly what that project taught me.
Oh, That's cool. That's cool. I definitely want to talk about that. And you mentioned your business as well. But you actually didn't go straight from uni into running your business, right? You went into agency land. Is that right?
Yeah, it was another one of those career paths. Like I thought I'd escaped the career path thing and the have to career path. But back then, I have so much hope for this next generation that they can build their own careers in the way that they want to and really sort of adapt things. Back then it was you went and worked for an agency or you were a failure. You went and got a job in that industry, and if they did not deem you of value, you were a failure because you could not succeed.
Mm.
And I will say that probably working in agency, I learned so much in working in agencies, but I will say that some of the things I learned the most was what I will never, ever put up with again, and what wasn't. I always felt out of kilter. There was such a classist formula that was, very much built into, and it's built into so many corporate environments. And I would love to say that, early 2000s, things moved beyond the stereotype of madmen advertising agencies, but it hadn't. Sure, they were wearing jeans and T-shirts and not three-piece suits, but it was exactly the same.
Okay, so a bit of a toxic environment.
Yeah, it was. I will say that, yes, a lot of that is also my own reflection now and realising that I probably played my part in that sort of space as well. But I will say that, and it was probably the kid in me, like I went balls out at the world, and I just had this unending confidence that I would do the things that I wanted to do. Mm. And I kind of always knew I had something to offer, and I didn't quite know what it was yet, but I knew that if somebody just believed in me enough that I could do the things, and I put so much of my creative value in someone else's hands.
Mm.
And it was soul destroying. Like I didn't wear the short skirts. I didn't flirt. I didn't yes sir, no sir very well. I always had an opinion and I could never shut my mouth. And I was broken in a lot of ways by the whole, this is the way that your creativity must be done. And I kind of, in a very male-dominated environment, I had a lot of negative experiences, quite honestly. And I'm not saying that that's all men and all of that sort of stuff, but it was definitely my experience of that time. And I lost some of that spark because every time I never really had a mentor. My mum was my mentor. Honestly, I always joke with her that she should have got my last year of university tuition because I learnt more from her about the real world of design than I learnt from being at university.
Yeah.
She was the one that forced me to go, and everyone else was making up their own fun projects, and she forced me to go out and actually get real people and offer my services for free and stuff. And so I already had a big taste of what working for myself could be like, but that wasn't an option.
Mm.
It wasn't what was done back then.
So, yeah, so jumping straight out of uni into running your own business was just not an acceptable option.
It wasn't even like, I genuinely cannot name at any point that I thought that was the thing I could do.
Wow. Okay.
It was seen as you worked at an agency and did freelance work, or there were times that I even got to a certain point in some of my jobs and just went, I can't do this anymore if this is what my job's going to be. But I always came back to it in its own ways. Like I worked at a cafe, but I worked at a cafe in a very entrepreneurial sort of environment, and people would be like, oh, tell me your story, because I'd come in and they'd be regulars and they'd tell me their story about the fact they owned a business, and I'd be like, well, I'm helping my friend out at a cafe, but I'm actually a graphic designer. And they'd be like, oh, interesting. I might have some things for you. So again, that actually came through again. So I kind of have had pockets of working for myself, but never even thought that it was an option.
Oh yeah, like a full-time earning a living wage. Yeah. Wow.
Because I didn't know business. So how could I do that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Overheads. Oh, well, you must have an office and you must do this, and that's what deems you a success and professional.
Mm.
There was so many cliches. There was so many this is how it's supposed to be. There was very little flexibility, and some of that might have been my own headspace, but I feel like it was a very generational sign of the times thing. But honestly, I just had that moment now where I just realized, holy crap, I actually have worked for myself a lot all the way through.
There you go.
And I didn't realize it until now. Like, I went, yeah, I did at university. I worked for myself and worked for real clients. Yeah. Even though they weren't paying me, they were real clients, and I had to get used to it. And then when agency life got too much, I went and worked at cafes, and that was seen, you know, in my head, it was seen as a failure. But the realization is I still found a way to do it.
Yeah, wow. Isn't that interesting that, yeah, like doing all this freelancing, offering free services to build your portfolio, or, you know, whatever you're doing, that never occurred to you that it was actually you running your own business and working for yourself? That is very intriguing to me. So what was the catalyst that made you go, okay, that's it. I have had enough of being squished into a box at, you know, working in an agency. I'm actually going to go and start my own business. What actually was that thing that made you take that leap?
Make it sound like it was like something really exciting and like really empowering, but honestly, I got made redundant.
Oh, there you go. Well,
but I got made redundant in a way that was kind of empowering. I was working in a space where, again, I'd been chucked under the bus quite a few times as a scapegoat and things like that, and I'd stuck it out because, you know, money. But I was working in a different space than I had before. It was an in-house role in a communications team, working for under an umbrella corporation, so working for multiple of the other businesses they had under that umbrella. So I kind of got some variety and stuff, and it really did treat me like they treated you well with money, but there was definitely some things that I learned about what I would and wouldn't put up with again. But it taught me that I have great communication skills, that I actually have value, because I saw the difference I was making. I was working for a not-for-profit sort of space, and I saw when they got grants and funding off the kind of work I was doing. So it was I sort of started to see that the results of what I could do. And I started to really work on myself. That was probably a big thing. I kind of healed some of those past wounds. I went to therapy. I did the things and worked on myself. And it's probably one of the biggest lessons I've learned in my creative career, is that every time I work on myself, my career moves forward. Or every time I have personal growth, my business grows. And so I do feel like in that role, I found myself again. I believed in myself again. I put myself out there again. I sort of stepped up into what I believed was the capacity that I could offer something, and I rediscovered that. And it was too big and too much, and they made me redundant.
Oh, wow. It's though I was going to say that it's kind of like the golden handcuffs. You know, you've got this job that's paying you well. It's all right. You start to see these little things that you are liking about it. And then that means that you're not going to take the leap and trust yourself and back yourself because all these things are so good. So, I mean, redundancy is, a surprisingly common story that we hear about on the podcast, is that there always has to be this like one catalyst. It's either yourself or some external force to propel you forward into the next stage.
Yeah. Well, I will say that the hardest thing was in that first period was that I took a corporate mindset into something that was inherently personal, because I'd been sort of taught that this is the way that things are done. And as much as I'd had that personal growth, it felt at that stage still quite separate to what I could do in my own business. You know, it felt. And so I promptly started trying to do things in a corporate way. I must work these hours, I must do these things, and I must do it in this way, and promptly put myself into burnout.
Oh, wow. After you started your business?
Yeah.
And so what did that look like?
I had pneumonia when I was a kid. And I would compare burnout to pneumonia. I was drained. There wasn't a drop of energy left in me. Body, mind, and soul was just done. I could barely sort of almost get out of bed. You know, it was just I'd gone so hard, but it wasn't just pneumonia, which was like attacking my body. It was like because this felt so personal and it felt like it was a failure. There was a whole bunch of like head stuff going on as well. And it took about a month and a half to get out of, quite honestly. And I'm very grateful that I had redundancy money to cover me across that period, because I don't know if I could have worked. And burnout is constantly my gauge now of what I never want to do again. You know, I feel like some of the stuff I've possibly said sounds very negative, but if anything, I wouldn't be where I am now without using those things as a check and a gauge for what I want and how I want to feel and how I want to live my life and run my business.
Oh, well, I agree with that, though. Like, I say this to clients all the time. You know, it's one thing to know what you want. Some people know what they want. But quite often it takes seeing something you don't want to get that clarity.
Yeah.
And when I launched my business as well, I was like, I've had all these negative experiences in my work. I know exactly what I don't want my business to be like.
Yeah.
And I think that's so powerful. It's so powerful to just go, this is not what I want to do. I don't know what I do want to do, but I know it's not this.
You know, I actually mentioned this to someone the other day, and I feel like when you first start a business and as creatives, we naturally just want to like run off to the shiny objects of like doing the fun things and making things pretty and oh my God. But I feel like the business side of things becomes the hardest, and everyone says niche, 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 you know, and it's like, I don't know who I am in this business and you expect me to like define something right now that is going to be the essence of who I am forever after. Like, that's a lot of pressure. But I do feel, and the way that I define it now is exactly what you've just said. By building up the things that you know you don't want to be or feel or experience ever again, by starting to, you know, work with certain clients and go, well, there's a red flag. I'm not working with that kind of person anymore, or this happened in this situation, so I'm going to make sure that that never happens again. So that closes off these people, and it starts to just narrow things in. And then suddenly all you've got is this clear path, because you've kind of built up these walls and you've got this clear path to your North Star where it's like, cool, now I'm doing all the things that feel right, feel aligned. I get to be in my zone of genius and do the things that bring me joy. And I don't have to deal with that stuff anymore, because I've built it in a way of that realization of I will not do those things, and I will not even like let myself be tempted by that space, because I know what that feels like. And I ain't going backwards.
Yeah. Go girl. So yeah, I mean, you've had this burnout in your first year of working for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously you are still working and you're still running your own business. Tell me, how did you get out of that, and like how have you avoided that burnout? How have you avoided burnout since then?
I would say one of my biggest words in business is firstly, let me say, balance is bullshit. Like, everyone who acts like balance is an achievable thing, that's how you put yourself into burnout. By trying to be perfect, by trying to be all the things, by trying to like create this picture perfect world. Balance is bullshit. Awareness is actually what you need. It's that constant level of check-in and adaptability. You know, something feels off, something feels crap. I'm really tired this week. Why? Don't like a burnout corporate space teaches us to push through and keep going and drink the coffee and go, 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 go. But if I come out of a project feeling flat and like I just want to give it all up, why? What could have I done differently? What could have I not allowed into my space so that I could protect my peace, my happiness, my creativity for the next person? And putting boundaries in place, having the awareness of what those things are and checking in, and then adapting. Like, it's not a it's not something in concrete. We don't build things, especially around creativity. Creativity is one of the things that will always push and pull us in different directions. So if we're not adaptable and we don't have that level of awareness, we're either going to stagnate or we're going to break. So creativity is kind of one of my favorite books about creativity is Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert. And she talks about it as going through life with almost thinking of creativity as this person you're going through life with. And people grow, people change, people have shitty times, they have good times, you know. And so if you think of your creativity as a person and have to change, it's like having a friendship. Friendships go through stages, your creativity goes through stages, your business goes through stages. So having a level of awareness, and that's what burnout taught me, was that I had to check in with those things more often and have a level of personal care that the corporate space didn't celebrate or welcome or foster.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and that's why you talk about, you know, every time you do your personal work, your business gets better. What you just said there shows an immense amount of self-reflection and personal work that has gone into that to protect yourself and to ensure that you can sustain your creativity.
Yeah, I was a self-confessed perfectionist, and perfectionism is also bullshit. Like, it's impossible. Think nothing's perfect. And I had to go through that journey of realization. I had to go through that journey of discovering the kid I used to be and the way I used to go about my creativity. And then I had to break down a lot of the stuff that I'd been taught, the stories I was telling myself. You know, the shoulds, the have tos, those are my most hated words in anything, creativity, business, life. The rebel in me rebels against them now. Like, the second I hear that, my body turns around and goes the other direction, basically, because shoulds are often someone else's preconceived notions of telling you how things should be. But another one of my business lessons is you define your own success. It's not defined by external beings. Like, these days, I don't check myself against any external factors. I don't need that person's validation to feel like I'm doing well. I've kind of created my own checks and balances for my creativity, my life, my business. And if I'm reaching those things, cool, done, success.
Wow, that's hard to do when we're delivering work for clients, right? Because they do say, like, oh, I like this or I don't like that. And so you're getting this feedback regardless.
Yeah, and I think, again, it's challenging the inner voices of what that actually means. You know, old me would have taken that very personally, would have seen it as like a failure, would have doubled down and gone hardcore to prove myself. But now I have a tendency, again, to have that awareness and go, okay, cool. So that's a really good thing. It's like those boundaries and those things. That's actually a good thing. We know what you don't like now. So let's break that down instead of just being a blanket. And this is really much like, so I've built quite extensive processes around my business and the packages that I do and things like that. And again, it's that level of awareness that if I'm just asking someone a question, do you like it? It's a simple yes or no answer. And that doesn't give me anything to move on with. It doesn't give me anything to explore. It doesn't give me anything to take that next step. So I ask questions, and I ask better questions. Right?
Yeah.
Oh, you don't like it? Every single piece that I hand over, be it a mood board, a logo, you know, a 40-page document, no matter what I hand over, it's why. Do you like the colours? Yes. Which colours do you like? These ones. Cool. Why? But okay, you don't like it. What don't you like? Okay, and it gets them to really analyse what it is that's jarring to them. Why? I feel like, as an artist that is in a professional space, that we're expecting money to be paid, and it's like we're working for other businesses that have other, things that they're measuring success against, and, versus just creating for freedom and for fun. We need to have that level of curiosity, and we need to keep that flowing. And that's that why. It's practicing communication. It's practicing, giving people the space and the scope to be able to learn how to express that. Because as a designer, I can give you a million reasons for things, but for someone who's not naturally or a natural in that space, I have to help them along the way.
Yeah.
I can't expect a standing ovation and a round of applause and freaking fireworks every time, and I learn from that and the client learns from that. Great, cool. Becomes a positive experience.
Yeah. Yeah. It's great. You've got to be sort of a bit of a guide along the process when you're working with clients.
Yeah.
Now you mentioned flow there. You mentioned it previously as well, because one of the ways to sustain your creativity is about getting into that creative flow. But that's hard to do. How do you do that when there's all these competing demands and clients and time and meetings and all that sort of stuff?
And again, it sort of goes back to the shoulds and have tos. We sort of get told that there's a precise and a formula for business that will guarantee success. And everyone has a different formula for us, and everyone has a different way that, this is the way that business must be done. And we look externally for a lot of that stuff, especially when we're overwhelmed and we're going into business and it's not our specialty. Like my specialty is being creative and being in the creative space and creating things in these ways. You introduce business into it and it's a whole nother language. It's a whole nother thing. And so we're trying to look externally for someone to tell us how this is supposed to work. It doesn't work that way. The moment that I started to have a business that works in a way that I work, that works for me, that allows me space for my creativity, because my business is reliant on my creativity, is to take look, it's another one, awareness, and taking that step back and going, sure, 9 to 5 is how it was supposed to work. When I was working in an agency, in an environment that, let's be honest, probably didn't foster it working best that way. And I feel like since COVID, side note, everyone's got a bit better with recognizing that people work in different ways. But I had to go through the journey of figuring out how I work best. So I worked out I am my most creative in the mornings. So the packages I designed so that I was able to do my most creative work. I work fast and my packages are fast. Like my logos start from 2 days. So they're fast. Wow. So to do that, yes, it feels like it would put more pressure, but for other people, I worked out that's how I work best. I don't work best when things drag out over 8 weeks. I get bored. I need shiny objects. I need like new and fun and exciting and energy. That's what I feed off best. So I had to put those into the way that I design the packages I offer out into the world. So I worked out that I was most creative in the morning. So I don't let anyone book a meeting with me, except for this one, you're lucky, in the morning. But this is creativity, what we're doing right here. So this is okay. I don't typically book, client meetings or anything like that before 12 o'clock because that's my peak creativity time. The time when my brain's running on the good coffee. Right?
That's good.
And so my calendar's only open for meetings from 12 to 2 because I've realized that I'm usually in a bit of a carb coma after lunch, and it's good to have the chats at that time, and I'm usually a little bit more I'm getting into the groove of the day. My creativity is reliant on my energy and stuff like that. I'm most energetic in the mornings. And also, I also realized, and again, this feeds into my processes and stuff like that, I analyze the things that annoyed me. Like we talked about, and that's what narrowed down. So if you're a person that can jump in and be creative off minimal information, great, good for you. That's not me. I'm an information whore. I need more. Like the more information I can consume and set myself a project, because I look at these as school projects still, look at the projects I was setting myself creatively back when I was a kid, the more information, the better. So I designed my process to gather as much of that information so I'm not messing around with backwards and forwards. And during what's supposed to be my creative time, I have everything. I can research. I realize I love researching in my pajamas, binging some crap show on Netflix after the whole house is quiet. And I love just like binging out on Pinterest while having a cup of tea. Like that's me recognizing how I do that thing best. So I get my questionnaire with all of this information from these people, and I just give myself research freedom time. I go deep, and my Pinterest board's full to like exploding point for my clients. But that's how I work best. It took me a time, but it's, again, having that awareness, having that check-in, going back and going, shit, that didn't really work. How could I figure out a way, or what do I need to try to see what could work better?
Absolutely. Yeah, wow. There's a couple of recurring themes, I think, in this podcast episode. Firstly, narrowing down from what you don't like, and self-awareness is a huge, huge, huge part of this. Well, thank you so much. I feel like we could keep talking forever, but there was so much to unpack in that. I need to go and have a cup of tea and think about it. But thank you so much for joining me today, Rowena.
Thank you. Honestly, like you, I could talk about creativity for days. I feel like you can only talk about it amongst fellow creatives. So thank you for giving me the space to do so today.
No, I appreciate you sharing this little bit of you with us. And what I'll do is I'll pop the links to your website and everything else in our show notes so people can come and follow you a little bit more and listen to some of the other episodes that you're on. And I also want to thank everyone who's tuned in today to Creativity Uncovered. If you enjoyed this episode, please send it to a friend or give us a review or a rating on Apple or Spotify. That would be absolutely ace. And until next episode, take care. If you've made it this far, a huge thank you for your support and tuning into today's episode. Creativity Uncovered has been lovingly recorded on the land of the Cubby Cubby people, and we pay our respect to elders past, present, and emerging. This podcast has been produced by my amazing team here at Crisp Communications, and the music you just heard was composed by James Gatling. If you liked this episode, please do share it around and help us on our mission to unlock more creativity in this world. You can also hit subscribe so you don't miss out on any new episode releases.